The haunted village. Lynn stepped out of the car, immediately feeling the bone-chilling cold of the land. Her long hair fluttered in the wind as if an invisible hand was beckoning her. The entire village was shrouded in a thick mist, making everything appear hazy and elusive. The locals had long whispered that restless souls could not find peace and still roamed the land. And every night they awoke, knocking on the doors of every house, searching for those brave enough to trespass. Lynn's first impression was one of emptiness, not a silence, but a disturbing stillness, as if the air here was infected by something dark and haunting. She took a deep breath, trying to reassure herself that this was just an abandoned village. Nothing to be afraid of. But then a cold gust of wind swept through, making her shudder. Strange sounds began to echo from the houses like the whispers of forgotten souls, pleading for something Lynn could not comprehend. She paused for a moment, looking up at the large door of the abandoned house ahead. A rusted metal door which seemed untouched for decades. Though the weak sunlight was fading, she could still feel the eyes watching her from inside that house. Lynn's feet moved forward, but as soon as she reached the doorstep, a sound broke the silence. Footsteps, light yet distinct, as if someone were moving in the darkness, close behind her. Lynn turned around but saw no one. Still, the feeling of coldness enveloped her. The footsteps echoed again, this time closer. She turned around, looking into the deep darkness of the house. A faint, shadowy figure appeared in the upper window, standing motionless. It was not a living person. Lynn knew that, even though she could not see the face. The colors of the darkness, the weak light, it all fused together, making the figure appear incredibly eerie. Lynn froze, and in that stillness, a voice whispered, soft yet clear, from within the house, "Lynn, you cannot escape." The suffocating sensation enveloped Lynn, and the space around her seemed to constrict, making it impossible for her to move a single step. The voice, not just from the house, but from every corner of the village, echoed in her mind. Those words could not be erased, repeating incessantly, as if torn from a past she could never reach. Lynn held her breath, her legs trembling, but she could not turn back. She could not step forward. Something invisible yet incredibly powerful was pulling her into that place. And then, in that moment of stillness, another voice whispered from somewhere deep within the house, "Lynn, you cannot escape." The cold air swept past her again. Not the wind, but the breath of the woman. Lynn could not move. She could only watch as the woman approached her. Each step she took seemed to pull Lynn deeper into another world where darkness never faded, where souls lingered in the air. As the woman neared, Lynn felt a cold gust brush against her. But it wasn't wind. It was her breath, heavy and chilling. Lynn couldn't utter a word, only stand frozen, watching the woman get closer, feeling the fear rise in her chest. "Do you want to know the truth about this village?" the voice whispered, like a tempting offer. Lynn couldn't answer, only shake her head, feeling her body being drawn into an endless nightmarish abyss. The woman said nothing more, simply smiled faintly, and suddenly, she vanished into the air, leaving Lynn standing motionless in the dark, empty space. But then, in that moment, Lynn realized she wasn't just standing in an abandoned house. She was standing between two worlds, where the boundary between the real and the spirit world had become blurred. As Lynn stood frozen in the darkness, she could clearly feel the presence of something powerful and invisible surrounding her. The entire space in the house began to shift, not physically, but in an intangible way in the air. The walls around her seemed to contract, the space growing tighter and tighter. Lynn looked around, trying to find an escape, but each step she took made everything more unclear. She could hear whispers from everywhere, from the souls trapped in this village. Suddenly, a dry sound echoed from deep inside the house. Lynn turned around, and at that moment, she saw a large door slowly creaking open, not by the wind, but as if some force was controlling it. The door opened wide, revealing a strange light that illuminated an old stone wall. Mysterious writing began to appear on the wall, glowing in the darkness as if someone were writing out secrets buried long ago. "Anyone who dares to enter here will never leave." The voice rang out again, this time clear enough that Lynn could feel the cold breath of those words. She couldn't move closer to the wall, but her eyes were drawn to the strange writing. A faint noise startled Lynn. She turned around, and when she saw that shadow again, she knew for certain that it was no ordinary ghost. It was a soul that had once lived here, and now it was seeking to connect with her. Lynn realized that she had unwittingly become a part of this village. The souls here could not pass on until someone else took their place. And that someone was her. In that final moment, Lynn felt a powerful force pulling her toward the wall. The curses, the sounds, and the darkness engulfed her. As if a vortex she could not escape from had opened up. The strange lights began to flicker, and Lynn realized that she wasn't just facing haunted spirits, but that she herself was becoming a part of this village, a haunted village that would never be forgotten. As Lynn stood frozen in the thickening darkness, she realized that this wasn't just any abandoned house. She was now standing between two worlds, one where the boundary between the living and the dead had blurred. The oppressive air around her seemed to push in from every direction, making it impossible for her to breathe freely. The room she was in, once a home, now felt like a tomb. The walls, cracked and aged, had an ominous presence, as if they were whispering their secrets to the very air itself. Lynn could hear faint echoes of voices, laughing, crying, pleading, as though the house was alive with the memories of those who had lived here and never left. The floor beneath her feet creaked under the weight of unseen footsteps, and the shadows moved, twisting and stretching like sentient beings eager to pull her into their depths. Lynn's breath quickened. Her heart pounded in her chest, each beat growing louder in the stillness of the room. She could feel the weight of 1,000 eyes upon her, and yet when she turned, no one was there. The coldness in the room intensified, and she wrapped her arms around herself, trying to ward off the overwhelming sensation of being watched. And then a sharp noise pierced the air, something heavy falling to the floor. Lynn spun around, her pulse racing. A large, ancient wooden chest lay open at her feet, its contents spilled across the floor. Her eyes were drawn to a peculiar object, an old, yellowed photograph, partially buried beneath a torn piece of cloth. It was a picture of a woman, standing in front of a house that resembled this one. But the woman's face was obscured by something. Perhaps the shadow of the camera, or something far darker. Lynn's hands trembled as she reached down to pick up the photograph. The woman's eyes were hollow, devoid of life, as if she had been robbed of her soul. There was a chilling familiarity in her expression, something that Lynn couldn't place, yet it gnawed at her, like a memory just out of reach. She slipped the photograph into her pocket, her mind racing with questions. Who was this woman? Was she someone who had lived here long ago? Or was she a lost soul forever trapped within the walls of this cursed place? As Lynn stood there, trying to steady her nerves, the temperature in the room dropped even further. A soft, distant sound reached her ears, a slow, rhythmic tapping. It was coming from upstairs. Unable to resist, Lynn made her way up the narrow staircase, each step creaking under her weight. The air grew heavier with every movement, pressing against her chest. As she reached the top of the stairs, the tapping grew louder, more urgent. It was as if something or someone was trying to get her attention. Lynn pushed open a door at the end of the hall, and there, in the center of the room, she saw it. A large wooden chest, its surface worn and scratched by years of neglect. The tapping was coming from inside. Her heart skipped a beat as she approached the chest. The closer she got, the louder the noise became until it felt like it was inside her head, rattling her thoughts. Lynn's hand hovered over the lid, her mind screaming at her to turn back. But something compelled her forward. With a deep breath, she lifted the lid. Inside, there was nothing but a pile of old, tattered clothes. But as Lynn looked closer, she saw something that made her blood run cold. Beneath the clothes, there was a small wooden box. She reached in, her fingers trembling as she lifted it out. It was intricately carved, with strange symbols etched into the surface. Lynn's curiosity overcame her fear. She opened the box, revealing a small, blackened stone. It was cold to the touch, and as she held it in her palm, she felt a sudden surge of energy, like an electric shock running up her arm. Her vision blurred for a moment, and she stumbled back, nearly falling to the floor. Then the house seemed to shift. The walls seemed to breathe, expanding and contracting as if the very house itself were alive. The air became thick with the stench of decay, and the whispers grew louder, more frantic. Lynn, the voice from earlier whispered, now echoing in her mind. You have awakened us. Lynn dropped the stone, her body shaking uncontrollably. The floor beneath her feet seemed to tilt, and the room spun around her. She stumbled backward, her hand grabbing at the doorframe for support, but the house seemed to be shifting, pulling her in every direction. Suddenly, she was no longer alone. The woman from the photograph stood before her, her hollow eyes staring directly into Lynn's soul. Her lips curled into a twisted smile. "You've released us," the woman's voice echoed, now layered with others. A chorus of tortured souls trapped in the walls of the house. "Now you must take our place." The walls groaned, and the floor beneath Lynn's feet cracked open, revealing a deep, inky blackness. A cold, skeletal hand reached up from the darkness, grabbing her wrist. Lynn screamed, but the sound was swallowed by the suffocating silence that followed. The woman's smile grew wider, and as Lynn's vision darkened, she heard the final words echo in her mind. "You are ours now." The room, the house, the entire village faded away as Lynn was dragged into the darkness. She could feel her body being pulled apart, piece by piece, until nothing remained of her but a whisper in the wind, carried away by the night. As Lynn's soul merged with the village, she became one with the restless spirits that had once roamed here. Her presence was now a part of the village, and the cycle would begin anew. The house waited patiently for its next victim, and the whispers would call out once again, seeking another soul to take its place. The village, forever haunted, would never be forgotten, and Lynn would never leave.